You're watching Southwest Florida in Focus. Coming up, a bump in pay is coming for many workers throughout the Sunshine State.
Anything counts towards anything, whether it's $1, $2, or it's, even cents.
We speak with attorney John Morgan on why he fought for an increase for the state's minimum wage. As Florida's citrus industry struggles to get back on track, tariffs and immigration crackdowns are making things more difficult for Grove owners. And Harlem Heights is alive with the sound of music. One community is offering a program that's inspiring the next generation of musicians. Hello, I'm Sandra Victorova. Thank you for joining us. $1 more an hour. That's the pay raise workers who receive minimum wage will get in just days, thanks to Florida voters. In 2020, a supermajority approved an amendment to Florida's Constitution to gradually raise the state's minimum wage over a 6-year period. Starting September 30th, non-tipped workers who earn the minimum wage of $13 an hour will get $14 an hour. Tipped employees go from $9.98 an hour to $10.98. In September of 2026, it will go up another $1. For business owners like Shannon Berg, who co-owns Gymnastics World in Fort Myers, the financial burden of a forced pay raise is outweighed by having happy and loyal employees.
Having 45 employees, even $1 per employee with their hours does add a chunk of change to our payroll. I think that the reason our customers do stay is because they see how much our employees really love working here. And the more you pay your employees, the longer they're going to stay and the harder they're going to work for you. And that's what it comes down to.
We are joined now by attorney John Morgan, who spearheaded the push for the ballot initiative to raise the minimum wage. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Morgan.
Happy to be here.
So you face plenty of opposition from some business groups to get this amendment passed. Those groups said the increase would harm Florida's economy and Florida's companies, especially small businesses. What do you think has been the impact of raising minimum wage?
Well, I think that rising tides raise all boats. And I think what has happened is business owners have had to compete with other business owners for labor, and that the rising wages have risen and made other wages rise. And guess what? We're in one of the strongest economies we've ever been in, and I did this years ago. And so for all those people who were like the little boy and little girl who cried wolf, the wolf never came, and it's still not enough.
So, of course, there are going to be a lot of small business owners who will say they are struggling with tariffs and other pressures like the cost of health care. What would you say to those business owners who say they can't afford to continue to pay employees more?
Well, what I would say to them is, look, some people do and some people don't. This is the reason we have a capitalistic society is you got to compete. You got to do what you can do best. The same people who are complaining that they can't make it, that they can't do it, across the street, there's a great restaurant or a great store with people pouring out of the building. So a lot of people want to blame their own problems on wages or overhead. Really, the way to do it is look at yourself and say, why is my competitor doing so well and why am I doing so poorly, instead of saying, I'm going to treat my employees poorly.
So the state's minimum wage is about double the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. Why does it matter what the minimum wage is when so many companies are already paying their employees more than that?
Well, that's fantastic. When I did it here, when I did this years ago, almost immediately Universal raised their wages, and that was great. The problem is, those wages, think about it. It was $8 an hour. That's $320 a week before taxes. You can't even get childcare, much less groceries with that. So the reason it all matters is survival of the people who really keep this engine running.
Mr. Morgan, we all understand that in September of next year, the minimum wage will go up another $1 across the state. The amendment says future increases, if I'm not mistaken, would be adjusted for inflation starting in 2027. Explain that. What could we expect to see?
Well, there's a cost of living component that goes with all governments. And so what we can expect to see is the legislature enact an enactment clause that would tie the minimum wage so it doesn't just stop when it stops, that it keeps moving, adjusted for the cost of living. What does the cost of living mean to ordinary people? It's inflation. Right now, coffee's up 20%, bacon's up 20%. That's inflation, and the COLA is meant to keep up with inflation to the best of our ability. Not fully, but somewhat.
Attorney John Morgan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great being with you.
In the aftermath of the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, Florida is taking new steps to combat the growing concern over political violence. State Attorney General James Uthmeier unveiled a new portal to combat violent extremism. Citizens can report any calls to violence from posts on social media or public gatherings. Uthmeier said he respects the right to free speech and that investigations stemming from a portal complaint would not violate the First Amendment.
But there's a big difference when it comes to a threat of violence, a call for violence. That is not protected by the First Amendment. And if we get a report of such threats, we will immediately refer them to our investigators and we will work with law enforcement to protect our citizens.
Uthmeier added that the portal is not for emergencies and anyone who provides intentional false information could face charges. Well, some security analysts believe the recent shooting involving Kirk could spark more political violence, and people outside of the formal political process are being perceived as legitimate targets. We spoke with Dr. Ari Perliger, a professor of criminology and justice studies at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, shortly after Mr. Kirk's death. Professor, I know you track extremist social media accounts. What have you seen since the killing of Mr. Kirk, and does it have you concerned about what you're seeing?
I think we should be very concerned. I think that in many ways, the assassination of Kirk, further facilitated sentiments and views that were already gaining a lot of momentum on social media. For example, the perception that we're talking about a zero-sum game, a competition between both sides, and that there really is no space for collaboration, for cooperation, for understanding, a sense that we are on the verge of a civil war, that we are in the midst of a cultural, political, social conflict that cannot really be solved. And I think that what we see in social media, especially in the more extremist accounts, is how many people are believe that basically we are now in the midst of a violent conflict, a cultural conflict. And I'm concerned that more people will feel that they have no choice but to engage in illegal and violent activities to promote their objectives. And I think that also, enhance existing sentiments about the dysfunctional of our political system, about the fact that governance is not effective anymore, and the fact that the other side is really dehumanizing or demonizing its political rivals. So all those elements, which I think were part of our very polarized political system and discourse, are being enhanced in the last few days.
I was reading an interview that you participated in where you said that political assassination comes in waves. Why is that?
I think basically political assassinations creating a contingency effect where assassinations are being normalized, are becoming another form of political activism. And what we've seen, I think, and that was something concerning, is that while most people really oppose and condemn the usage of violence, but we do see that there's a growing part of our population that is willing to accept those kinds of acts of violence and are willing even to portray them in a positive manner, right?
We see both sides demonizing the other, coming from our political leaders. How does this get any better?
I think it's crucial that we, the public, will incentivize leaders who are willing to work across the aisle. I think working across the aisle, first of all, will restore people's faith in the political system, in democracy, that it's actually functioning, that it actually brings positive results. Right now, our political system is completely dysfunctional. This is why presidents are using executive orders. Both Biden as well as Trump are basically their main mode of operation is using executive orders because Congress is basically dysfunctional. So I think by supporting leaders who are willing to engage in actual collaboration with their political rivals, that are willing to engage in consensus-building policies, will send a very important signal to their constituencies that the other side is not some kind of a demon, it's not the ultimate evil, and that we can actually have some commonalities that we can work together to improve our life in this country, and more importantly, to stop dehumanizing our political rivals. So I think we need to incentivize politicians who are willing really to work with others and are willing to engage with those that have different views. And I think that will send a very important signal to the constituencies, to the American public, that eventually it is possible to bridge those kind of divides.
Professor Ari Perliger, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, the struggles for Florida's citrus industry continue to mount. A look at government policies that have made matters worse and the outlook for other crops throughout the Sunshine State. Florida's citrus industry was dealt more devastating news following a lackluster growing season. A report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture revealed just over 14.5 million boxes of citrus were produced during the 2024-25 season, the lowest total since 1920. Citrus greening, labor shortages, trade wars, and the selling of groves is adding to current pressures, not just for citrus, but for all of Florida's agriculture. For more on the state of agriculture in Florida, we are joined by Dr. Barry Goodwin, a professor in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics with North Carolina State University and a presidential fellow here at FGCU. Thank you, Dr. Goodwin, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
So the U.S. Department of Agriculture said this year's citrus production in Florida was the lowest since the Great Depression. Do citrus have a viable future in Florida?
Well, I think so. I mean, it all depends upon, of course, what can be done with citrus greening, which has devastated the industry. That's a major hurdle that I think the industry is still working through. But certainly it's had a devastating effect on the industry, and the future really depends upon what can be done with greening, I think.
So with the new tariffs issued by the Trump administration, it's obviously had a big impact on farmers across the country in industries like soybean and corn. What would the impact be, let's say, to citrus, to watermelon? What is this added pressure? How much added pressure does it add to farmers?
Yeah, I mean, it's had really where the impacts come in, and it has had an impact in this regard, is the retaliatory measures that other countries have taken. And I think Canada is a prime example as it affects Florida, that, they've placed their own tariffs in response to the U.S. tariffs that have been put into place. And that's driving down prices. It's having a negative effect on the market for those goods that previously were going into Canada. Oranges is a good example of that.
Sure. So Southwest Florida is known for tomatoes, but tariffs and a lack of workers have led to farms reportedly being plowed over, fields that were potentially good. There was excitement after the Trump administration ended a U.S. and Mexico agreement on tomato imports, but with these worker shortages and the tariffs, could we see the tomato industry struggle as well?
Well, it's struggling right now. I mean, Mexico sort of rushed in and dumped a lot of tomatoes in advance of these agreements, and that pushed down prices. I mean, the prices, to my understanding, are below cost right now. And so, have seen actually some farmers plowing up their tomatoes in Southwest Florida, and in South Florida in general. So, the tomatoes is a particular case, but there's competition from Mexico in place that earlier in the year had a big impact on the tomato market, and I have heard of farmers plowing their tomatoes under and the labor shortages, a concern over the immigration policies had an effect also there. It's a very labor intensive industry, so to the extent that workers are not coming to work or afraid to work in the sector. That's having an effect as well. And I think the labor shortage has been something that farmers have realized.
If I can end with consumers, obviously we're starting to see those prices increase. What do you anticipate consumers will see in the future when it comes to citrus, when it comes to tomatoes, watermelons?
Yeah, anything that's imported, I think we're going to see a price increase. That's just what tariffs do, is raise the prices of imported goods. It's a mixed bag, really, to the extent that it's like in the tomato case, to the extent where we have a country that's responding in a certain way that drives down prices. Of course, that's good for consumers. If the tomatoes never make it to the market, it's not going to help consumers very much. But low prices to the extent that trade policies would push down prices, that can be a boon for the consumer. But on the same, by the same token, it's a negative for farmers who are dependent upon that. And I know the price of tomatoes went down tremendously over the last 6 months or so when some of this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
So to the extent we depend upon imported goods, fruits and vegetables from Mexico or other countries, the tariff is going to raise prices, and consumers are going to feel that at some point.
Dr. Barry Goodwin, we so appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. This week, at a speech to the United Nations General Assembly, President Donald Trump accused other nations of contributing to uncontrolled migration and funding an assault on Western nation borders. The statements were made after the Trump administration implemented an indefinite ban on refugee settlements in the U.S., putting the future of 12,000 refugees who had already completed security screenings in limbo. Federal funding was also temporarily frozen to organizations like Lutheran Services Florida, who help refugees begin a new life here in Southwest Florida. Despite the setbacks, WGCU's Culture and Connections reporter Elizabeth Andarji looks at how the organization continues to deliver hope to those who have lost almost everything.
This man once held one of Afghanistan's most powerful positions. Mayhan Saidi was the general director of foreign ministry until the Taliban took control in 2021. His escape was harrowing. He fled with nothing but a backpack and his brother. With hundreds crammed into the plane, they managed to squeeze space on the floor.
Once we kind of landed and that physical safety was no more a concern, I think then this emotional tsunami kind of hit me, that what just happened. And I was trying to just process that what is happening.
He said the hardest part was leaving what he'd built behind.
So when you know that between your house and your books and your whatever money that you have in the bank and your car and your life, you have to choose one. You choose life, always.
After making his way to Fort Myers, Saidi sought help from Lutheran Services Florida, a place offering opportunities like employment services, case management, tutoring, and more. 8-year-old Gaina Llanos is from Ecuador and arrived last year with her family. At the time, she didn't know English, but now she's a star pupil. She's won Panther of the Month, Honor Roll, the Principal's Award, and the Talented Teacher's Assistant Award.
I want to be here forever.
She's not the only one who's thrived in new conditions. Saidi worked at LSF as a caseworker and still carries gratitude.
A lot of the emotional damage that I had, I kind of managed to compensate it by the care and the compassion that was shown to me here.
After the federal government put funds on hold in February, Saidi's job was cut. LSF Program Director Lillian Pagan also saw the number of refugees dwindle.
We used to see at least about 100 to 200 a day in the front lobby, ready to register for services, where now they're just trickling in. Now we're begging for them to come in through the door.
The funds resumed in July, and Saidi has moved on. He's now married and is the proud father of a 1-year-old boy. He has a new job with Guardian Ad Litem, helping children. He says his work with refugees at LSF was healing.
I got very lucky that I ended up having a job in a very nice place, good colleagues, good team. I think my source of strength now is my family, my wife, my child, my friends that I made here. All this kind of makes me be hopeful to life.
For WGCU News, I'm Elizabeth Andarji.
Coming up, could the next Duke Ellington or Billy Joel be in our backyard? The program inspiring the next generation of musicians. Mastering an instrument can have a lifelong impact on children. The New England Board of Higher Education says that learning music strengthens brain pathways, builds discipline, and teamwork. In Harlem Heights, children as young as 6 are part of a program looking to provide a positive creative outlet. WGCU's Mike Walcher reports.
It's the first rehearsal this school year for the Mosaic Philharmonic, with string musicians from around Southwest Florida. Students pour their energy, creativity, even anxiety into the music.
I know I have ADHD, but when I'm playing or singing, I focus solely on what I'm playing or singing, so it helps me in that aspect as well.
Students follow conductor Roland Forty.
1, 2, off, 1, 2. 1. Beautiful, beautiful.
He's a professional musician and teacher at Rogers High School in Collier County. The students rehearse on the stage at the Heights Center. Harlem Heights traditionally is a minority and lower income area. We wondered why Mosaic? Turns out it's an acronym.
That stands for Musical Opportunities Supporting the Arts in Our Community.
Meet Melissa Barlow. Everyone just calls her the Music Lady. She founded the program and is Director of Arts and Community Programs at the Heights Center. Barlow says she came here after traveling the world as a professional musician. She felt she could make a difference in young lives through music.
It's the universal glue for everybody. It's a way to celebrate culture. It's a way for, us to communicate with each other. If you're having a bad day, you can express that on your instrument. You don't necessarily, if you're not ready to talk about it with your words, you have a way to express yourself and decompress. G, 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 G. Very nice.
The Mosaic program starts with free lessons for students at the Heights Charter School.
The music to me is, I love playing different songs, and we get to do concerts, and I get to see my friends.
Your turn. Ready? Play. D, A, D, and then we rest. So we always hope that that'll be the case, that we're going to discover the next Itzhak Perlman, but completely okay if we're also finding the next pediatrician that's going to go out and then in their community keep playing the violin for enjoyment.
Keep going, yeah, good.
Meanwhile, older students in the Philharmonic rehearse for 3 public performances this year at the Heights Center. The musicians also may play at other events around the area. Some say it's a respite from the demands of their courses.
It's a burden to me, the schoolwork, and music just helps me be free.
Melissa Barlow recalls one boy who was doing poorly in school, but after a year or so playing cello,
he found himself. He found where he could be successful, and it wasn't instant. He knew that he had to keep working at it, and then in those other areas where he was struggling a bit, he was going to also be successful. It just needed to take a little bit more time.
A fellow named Louis Armstrong once wrote to a fan, "Music is life itself," and they're proving it in the Heights. For WGCU News, I'm Mike Walcher.
Celebrating 100 years of Bob Rauschenberg. Coming up next week, we take a look at the cosmic forces that attracted the acclaimed artist to Southwest Florida. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to download the WGCU app where you can find all of our stories plus those extended interviews. We hope to see you next week right here on Southwest Florida in Focus. Thanks for watching. We've got more great content for you, from news to the arts to the environment. So be sure to like and subscribe to WGCU's YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the stories that matter to you.